Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Neuron Live. I'm Corey, and that's Grant. Hi, Grant.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
Excellent. Yeah, we're excited about this one today. It's a subject Grant and I talk about a lot in doing the Neuron. Is like what does it look like out in the real world? You know, what are different industries doing with AI right now? And we always come across little items, little articles here and there, and we're doing things. But for a little while, Grant has been putting together a decent amount of research on the subject, and has kind of been working it together into a little bit of a report. And as we've continued to have these, and we were like, you know what, let's do a fun topical live one day. This idea came together, and it's going to be a lot. We're going to move a little faster than usual. It may be a little more difficult to take questions on the fly and actually get through all of this. As it is, we have 16 industries, 8 of which we're going to do like a pretty deep dive into. That'll be several minutes. The others we're going to address, but it's going to be a little shorter punch on those. So we've pulled out some that we thought were a little extra interesting, and we're really excited. And I want to give a quick shout out at the top of the show here to our sponsor for today's video, and that is Harvard D3 and their online learning programs. A lot to come on that here in a little bit. We're going to talk about it some more. We'll show you a little bit about it, but just a quick hello and thank you to them. But before we do anything else, we have a guest with us right now that we're really excited about. He's a good friend of the Neuron and a good friend of me and Grant just in general. We're excited to bring with us today Joe Selesky. Joe joined Recon Analytics in 2025 as an analyst and CEO of AI. He leads product development and partnerships for Recon's AI consumer and enterprise pulse service, which delivers actionable insights and data from industry expertise to survey experiences, customer preferences, and intent for AI products and services. And if you've read the Neuron very long, you'll see Recon mentioned from time to time when we're diving and trying to find the data we want. And in looking at this, we thought, we could ask Joe for data, or we could just say, Joe, come be here and bring with you the data. So, Joe, welcome to the Neuron. We're excited to have you, man.
Oh, thank you, Corey and Grant. It's great to be here. It's great to bring some real detail and some insights that are actionable for folks. It's an amazing industry that we're all working in, and you really look at the rate of change. And our goal is to help the product teams have actionable insights so they can grow adoption, grow value, reduce the churn, and in the end, it's how are people using these tools to be more productive, to get more done, and we couldn't live without them. So it's nice that we use them on a daily basis, and being in an industry where insights are important, and helping people turn millions into billions. So great to be here, and I'm a fan of the Neuron. I don't go a day without looking for your signal in the noise. So it's really,
and that's how we met.
Yeah, it is great to be here.
Oh, goodness.
Very cool. Well, for anyone who is an OG reader of the Neuron, like Joe, you probably are familiar with the original co-founders, Pete and Noah. Well, Noah is going to be joining us today. I just heard from him. He's going to be joining in around 12:30 Eastern, so 30 minutes from now. So we'll be really excited to catch up with Noah when he joins, and we're going to try and blow his mind because he did pretty well for himself. He sold the newsletter to our parent company, Technology Advice, and he's been finding himself for the couple months since then, and so he's been out of the AI game. So we're going to try and blow his mind with all the craziness going on. So,
Absolutely, and we'll make sure to take a couple minutes and kind of let him share the Neuron's origin story as well. Thought that might be fun.
yeah.
And yeah. But that's it,
All right.
Grant. Do you want to kind of lead us through this maze today a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So there's one other caveat we'll give, which is, so we have created a massive research document that is probably more than any one chatbot could manage on its own, in a web browser. So Corey's actually pulled up the new ChatGPT 5.2 Codex on his computer, and we're going to have Codex help us answer questions in the chat and parse through our massive research document as we go.
Yes, and we're gonna see how that works. We haven't done this before, and I've spent the week. We had a really cool conversation with Taylor Mullen earlier in the week, who built the Gemini CLI, and you'll see that coming in a few weeks as an interview, and it's really fun and it's a great tool. But I've spent the week bouncing, basically learning CLIs, because it's not a thing that I have done before and was experienced with. So I did what any good nerd does, and I went and I downloaded Claude Code, Gemini CLI, and Codex. And I've been bouncing between each of them this week, and every one of them is really impressive and absolutely the most agentic stuff out there. And when I say agentic, I don't mean like it's a Zapier automation with an agent plugged in the middle. I mean, like, it goes and manipulates files. I've got it organizing my desktop and giving new names to my files while I'm over here sipping coffee and working on something else. And that's it's been really cool. But today we're going to try it as a fast-acting research partner.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to see what it can do. And for folks who've been paying attention, Claude Code has been having its main character moment. It's shining moment in the spotlight, let's say. And everyone who's a non-engineer has basically discovered it overnight. And then Anthropic tried to capitalize on that, and they made Claude Cowork. But Claude Cowork is only available if you have a Mac and if you pay for the expensive Max plan. So not everyone has access to that, but you can use some of these other CLI tools like Gemini or Codex or Claude Code, the regular Claude Code. So we highly recommend that everybody check that out. And hopefully when you see Corey wielding the power of the terminal, having only started it a week ago, you'll feel empowered to do so yourself.
Yes, I'd like to really talk up my massive expertise of some 72 hours.
As we say internally, I don't know if we say it enough. Like, if we can do it, you can do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And Corey and Grant, have you been using the client on Claude ever via MCP to access your other data sources like in MotherDuck?
So are you talking about like actually using the Anthropic MCP server, or
no? Actually, so using the Claude front end, right? Mm-hmm. And then within Claude you can identify MCP servers that you're accessing, mm-hmm. and then going straight from the Claude UX, going and doing search or doing some level of comparisons of your data to external data. So there's the CLI approach, right? Now there's you sort of look at these different modalities, but I think one of the things that Claude's done incredibly well is helping connect their AI to your data. And yes. I think you've seen some of my research, or this is one of the big chasms. If you really look at trust and data access, are two of the things that are going to accelerate adoption, I think, as we dig into the different industries. But I was just curious because I think it's a capability that I don't know is as broadly used as it should be. It's just remarkable how effective just the Claude front end is at making tool calls to go and do statistical analysis. So, in fact, the data that we're going to go through today, I created in Claude, generating an HTML output, instead of slides, etc. But it's just an amazing tool for turning data into value, which is what a software is there to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I mean they've been definitely steadily improving the front end experience, even for like the desktop or on the web version. Like there's things in there that I discovered this week that I didn't even realize was in there. So even me, who's paying attention quite closely to this, misses stuff. But But yeah, okay. Shall we dive into this?
Let's dive in. Let's
Sounds
dive
good.
in. Where are we starting, Grant?
All right, so we're going to start. So first of all, we're going to give just like a top line kind of summary of where we're at. We're calling this the AI reality check. And, we're moving from like the magic of demos into the mechanics of, okay, let's actually figure out the exact ways in which we can utilize this alien technology to help our business, whether we're in agriculture or construction or defense or you name it. We've got 16 industries we're going to try and go through, so we'll name them all. But let's start with construction, because construction's kind of a fun one, and it's a little bit like we rarely talk about this in the Neuron. It's one of the second least digitized industries like across the world, and it's kind of going through its digitization of dirt moment right now to protect really what's considered to be thin margins. So 2 to 5% margins typically in construction, which is like razor thin. And I wanted to highlight a couple of interesting facts here. So using AI for estimation takeoffs has actually reduced time by 76%, according to a University of Kansas study, which is quite interesting. If anyone in the crowd works in construction, definitely hit us up. Then we saw another example where 3 months were saved on an HS2 tunnel project where generative scheduling, which is an interesting concept, found a sequence that added 3 months of float, which is a buffer, to the timeline. And we even have layout robots, which is really cool. I'm going to see if we can pull up a demo of that, that can get to 1/16th inch of accuracy. So these are autonomous robots that can now print floor plans on concrete with slabs with one out of 16th inch precision. Pretty wild.
Well,
When
basic,
you're talking about construction, and the tunnel project where they were talking about all of that, when you think of the idea of juggling subcontractors and trying to schedule those people and having realistic time estimates of what things are going to take, and the ability to reach out and be like, we're going to need you 5 days early, or listen, you're going to have an extra week before we're ready for you, and the ability to really optimize that and make it all move fast, that's a big impact. I mean, it's a lot when you're juggling a project like a tunnel, I'm sure. Because, I mean, I think of, we used to do roofing years ago when I was young. My dad had a sheet metal construction business. And when you're looking at stuff like that, it's a balancing act. You need an orchestrator. You need an agent.
Well, it's amazing, Grant, because I don't think many people would appreciate that that construction is the 6th highest in daily active use.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. So science and biotech, when we can show the other data, but it's fascinating when you look at that. 33.5%, almost 34% of people in construction use AI daily.
Do we know, Joe, what type of tools that they use?
We do. Let me.
You can pull up your screen. I'm just going to show folks for a minute. So this is the robot that can lay the floor plans here. So I believe this is from a company called Dusty Robotics. This is
that like prints your blueprint on your slab.
Just straight up prints it.
That is so
pretty
cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. So construction is about 35% using ChatGPT, about 20% using Gemini, about 4.3% on Copilot, just under 5% using Apple AI. It's interesting. Meta is there at 4%, and about 0.7% using Claude. So so just interesting there, and I think when you really look at that overview of the industry. So this is AI adoption across the industry, and remarkable when you look at the adoption in science and biotech and finance. But when you look at this daily active use, there is construction.
Wow.
So pretty remarkable, and it comes back to exactly what you were saying, Corey, or Grant. There's the margins are limited, and the cost of waste is so high, whether it's wasted human capital or wasted materials. So how do you conserve time, conserve materials. They always say cut, measure twice, cut once.
Right. Yeah.
So I think
I've
AI
heard my
is really
father-in-law
helping.
say that.
Yeah.
It's a fact too.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a good. And I'm just looking at from a churn perspective. So you can see, planning to cancel versus keeping their subscription. So they're in the middle of the pack. And some of this is people starting with certain tools and then changing tools.
Let's talk about that actually, because I noticed that there were some specialty tools that came up a lot in my research for construction. Specifically, there's a tool called OpenSpace. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, but it's kind of interesting. I guess it's basically gives you a 360-degree video job site capture and mapping. I can go ahead and pull my screen up real quick and show this one. So share this tab. So this is kind of cool. Let's watch this video here. Let's get through the. So here she is. She's working on her computer, and this is a fully 3D, 360-degree view render that she can do. So she can look at it. Looks like
and look at how it was like a week ago, and progress track as well.
Right. Yeah, which that was another thing that came up a lot, right? Was the ability to be able to actually save a lot of time, because construction, I feel like going over on your timelines is incredibly painful and happens quite often. So
it is, and they're generally operating on really tight margins. For example, you're an industry that has a lot of variables when you start dealing with so many subcontractors. Everything is happening in estimates, so there's a certain amount of guesswork, but you have to guess tight, because otherwise you don't get the job. So, for a house to be built on, a 2 to 5% margin or something at the end is pretty rare, is pretty common. And anything you can do that cuts schedule slippage and rework, for example, down.
Yeah. Do you guys know? So do you see this? So he has a camera on his helmet. So basically what happens is they strap a 360-degree camera to their hard hat, and then they walk the site, and then the AI technology, which is called SLAM, automatically maps the video to the floor plan.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it creates an indisputable record of progress, and then you can click on any room and map and see where it is today versus where it was last week, like Corey was saying. This is pretty cool.
That's really cool. Yeah.
I like this because it's combining technologies. A lot of times, we're in the weeds and we're talking about just what the latest and greatest LLM can do. But this is taking multiple different tools and technologies that are pretty new and putting them together. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, but Gaussian splatting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's become really popular lately. I've been seeing a lot of Gaussian splatting demos because it's become really easy to do that. So that's another tool where you're basically recreating a room completely 360.
Yeah, well, whether it's Yan LeCun or others, you really start to talk about the large language model and its ability to process data, and then the idea behind spatial models. And some of this is where do we get our data from? And this is a great example of image capture, video capture, giving you another context, right? And another way to perceive that relative completion, against the blueprint.
There was one other technology before. If anyone has any questions, we can take some that came up a lot, which was called Alice Technologies. So Alice Technologies, I guess. So this is specifically for the problem of construction schedules. Let me go ahead and pull this. Actually, we can switch off my screen for a sec.
Yeah, and we'll need to get to the next one pretty quick.
Yeah, construction schedules, goes without saying, planners, schedulers need it. You input your constraints, crews, concrete, cure times, and then the AI can generate thousands of valid schedule options, which is interesting. And then basically it just finds the optimal sequence that adds the most amount of buffer time to the project that de-risks your timeline significantly. So it's quite an interesting project.
You look at time is more valuable than money, right? In the end, the one thing you can't get more of.
Yeah, exactly. All right, shall we move on here?
Let's move on. I want to take just a minute here to break in and talk about Harvard D3.
Let's do it.
When you're trying to stay ahead in the age of AI, it is no small task, man. It is difficult. So if you want practical skills you can use every day, not just buzzwords, check out Future Proof with AI from the Digital Data Design Institute at Harvard. It's built just for you. With the Future Proof with AI online learning platform, you can get on-demand modules, expert sessions with Harvard faculty, and even real-world frameworks that show you how AI can streamline work, whatever your organizational function. It's flexible, self-paced, and designed for professionals at any stage wanting to learn with confidence in an AI-driven workplace. Plus, you can earn shareable badges. We all love badges as you complete modules. And Neuron listeners get full access until September 26th for a discounted price of $199 with code NeuronPod. That's NEURONPOD. Learn more about Future Proof with AI at d3.harvard.edu.
Thanks, everybody. That was a message from our sponsor today, Harvard, who sponsored this video. So you're learning, and Harvard realizes that learning is great, so they sponsored the episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you want to go to next, Corey? Because we could talk about...
I think we ought to go to that guest that we have hiding downstairs here.
Okay. He showed up a little early, so let's bring him on. So... For folks who are old school readers of the Neuron, you know this face. This is Noah. What's up, Noah? How you doing?
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for having me. And Joe, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Noah.
Noah, it's great to see you, man. How you been?
Guys, I've been fantastic. It's been very fun to follow along with the podcast. You're doing such a good job.
Oh, thanks, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no. It's been a minute since folks have seen your face in the bottom. You want to give us a little bit of a quick rundown on what you've been up to since then?
Totally. I mean, a lot of different directions I could go into, but the past year has really been a time for some personal exploration and kind of wandering around into different passion projects and interests and traveling a lot and thinking about what's coming next for me, where I can contribute the most and where I'm most aligned, learning a lot. Nothing super tangible to share, but maybe at some point
Cool.
in the next few months.
Yeah. Well,
Noah, any chance you'd mind kind of sharing the Neuron's origin story for some of maybe our newer listeners, viewers, readers, and all of the things?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Pete and I started the company at the beginning of 2023, right after ChatGPT came out. We both kind of came to the conclusion separately that AI was going to be, this is obvious in hindsight, but super transformative in a lot of ways. And we were kind of both early students of what this technology had to offer. And I always enjoyed writing. Pete was also a teacher in his own ways when it came to new technologies. And we wanted to create a media brand that helped people stay up to date and stay educated on what was going to be such a transformative technology, and one that in a lot of ways is talked about in a very confusing and intimidating way a lot of times, especially for folks who don't have much background in AI or machine learning or tools like Chat and Claude and are new to the space. How can we offer them a helping hand to help them navigate the space? Because the people who are not paying attention to what AI has to offer in a lot of ways might get left behind. And we wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to happen to as many people as possible. And also it was just diving into our own interests, right? Like Pete and I were super interested in AI. We were learning about it a lot on our own. And we wanted to create an outlet to go and teach other people about what was happening in this space. And so that's how the newsletter was born. That's how the podcast was born. And we did a few courses as well throughout the last few years, some consulting, some various projects, but that's kind of the origin story, I would say, of the Neuron. Yeah, exactly 3 years ago.
It's so insane to think that's 3 years ago. That this has all happened so fast. This whole industry, it's been this whirlwind that feels like it's just always been there. But the truth is, it's sometimes like we're being shoved forward.
Yeah, no, it's nice. I think Sam Swire may have been a classmate of yours, but your origin story is very much the reason I'm here at Recon. You really look at, how much is going on. I've been involved in, hopefully making some of the plumbing people use every day, but you saw the rate of change and the amazing potential of AI, but really sort of opacity in that, of what is working, what is not working, how are products being perceived by end users. We can have all the benchmarks in the world, but how do end users actually experience the products? How much utility value are people getting? So, our work at Recon in AI and really in the other industries is how do we get enough data, from actual usage in the market on a high enough frequency to help people in the product teams. So it's interesting because you really look at this whole ecosystem of understanding, and it's everybody from the user all the way back to the product teams and the marketing teams understanding how do people experience the value? How do they find out about it? Where am I falling short? Where are other tools getting used instead? So, it's great work. I'm very much a fan because I think you did a great job setting up a community of awareness and and people helping each other, which I think is what the world needs a lot more of. So
it sure does. It sure does, and it's just an interesting space in general, and when you look at like the coverage around it, there's a really big gap between the super technical and the beginner, and there's just a lot more out there for the technical people. And the fact is, we see and deal with every day people who are really sharp in their field, but have no reason to know a lot of the terminology that surrounds AI and kind of how some of that technology works. And that's one of the things that Grant and I try every day to bring them is this ability to understand some of these complex concepts in a way that makes sense to someone who's an intelligent, educated person. But for you have no reason to know what inference is if your field is project management, maybe, for example, or something. How do we bridge that gap? And Grant does a really good job of that every single morning with the newsletter.
It's tough, man. It's tough because I get bogged down in the technical details. A lot of times I have to learn a lot of this stuff on the fly. So I thank you for everyone's grace as we build this thing together. Really appreciate it. No, I wanted to ask you, what's the wildest thing that you've seen since you've been out of the game every day? Like, you're not necessarily in the news as much as you were when you were head down writing the newsletter. Since that time, what is the thing that surprised you the most?
Like an AI moment?
Yeah, like an AI moment that surprised you the most, or a tool that surprised you the most.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of my realizations over the past year, having kind of zoomed out and being less in the weeds of the latest and greatest tools and models. And so I'm going to kind of dodge the question because
that's fine.
I don't think I've kind of I haven't been on the cutting edge of like, what are the greatest, newest tools and capabilities? But I think zooming out over the past 12 months has given me more space to think about how can I apply AI to more random situations in my life versus just exploring like what is the leading edge of what AI is capable of. And so there's a lot more random moments in my day-to-day life where I'm discovering AI's use cases versus thinking about it through like what is it best at, or what is it most capable of at this given moment. But it's almost like going back in time and being like, okay, how can I use AI for traveling, for instance? So a lot of my usage of AI over the past 4 or 5 months have been when I'm traveling, using it in different situations, when I'm maybe at like a historical landmark and I can just take a picture of it and ask it questions.
Tell me about it.
Like we know that AI has always been capable of that. So that's not some new discovery, but through actually using and testing it, I'm starting to realize like, oh, it's helpful here, it's not helpful here. And again, that's the same mindset that you guys all apply to learning about AI, on your day-to-day basis. And it's kind of what my mindset was as well when I was writing in the early days, which is just testing it in a variety of situations. And seeing where it's most helpful. Because I think like when we learn how to do those things, that's when like we can be most helpful to just like the average Joe user of AI. So I answered that question with a non-answer. So
That's
I hope we'll
okay,
take
though.
it.
No, that was great.
I think that is a good answer because, there's a lot of opportunity on the table that I think people don't understand. Like, Grant and I have talked about this a number of times. When you talk about travel, I let AI plan my wife and I's trip through California. I mean, it picked our hotels. It told us where to eat. It told us where to stay, what beach we absolutely had to hit if we're going to be near Big Sur. That kind of stuff. And it was just fantastic. But I mean, I also use it for things like, the other day I'm like, oh no, I've got more potatoes. How long do I cook the baked potatoes? I have 3 baked potatoes that weigh a total of like, 1.8 pounds. And I don't know how long to cook these and then be done good. I even used it to diagnose a problem with one of my son's wheels one day. Like we used voice chat in Chat GPT to hear the noise and be like, all right, we got a 2010 Ford Focus SL here, and it's got a weird grinding noise coming out from behind the front driver's side tower that sounds like this.
Dude, I did the exact same thing when I was on a road trip across the country. We had this horrible grinding sound when we were pumping the brakes, and so I had to talk to it. It was a rental car, so I had to talk to AI about it for a good like 5 minutes before I was like, okay, I think it's okay. It's also something that apparently happens with this model of car quite often, but it helps your anxiety, I think.
It does.
Yeah.
I repaired a garage door once with it too.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing.
Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say it's amazing when you think about when Noah started the Neuron and what percentage of people had touched AI. It would have been ML, it had been technical folks, et cetera. The ChatGPT moment, really started to help people, see how AI could be helpful. And now we're at 75% of the U.S. population has used AI, and 25
has at least tried it for something.
That's a wild stat, Joe. Can you actually pull that up? Because I remember you shared this data with us yesterday, right before we jumped.
Yeah, I mean, Noah, I was thinking, because you've been on the journey, you could sort of look at the percentage of people that are, using AI, and then you can look at the percentage of people that are actually daily usage. And daily usage, started the year at about 20% ish. There was a cycle here where we had some early adoption, but around 20%. We finished the year at about 25% of people, daily active users. And then you can look at the percentage of people that are actually paying for AI. And, I think, some of this chasm, you've seen this incredible investment, when we look at 8 model releases, nearly $1 trillion of investment, into the infrastructure. But, a lot of people have talked about bubble. I smile. This is far from a bubble. There will be the thing pioneer peril. The question, like Yahoo, most people don't remember Alta Vista, what
Sun
platform.
Microsystems.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of companies go on in different contexts, right? They become part of another company.
Right.
But I think the adoption, and you look at the paid subscription trends by industry, we're seeing a chasm that needs to get crossed. And I don't want to over repeat it, but trust and data. So great, Noah, as you're sort of talking about your use cases, but how much of your personal data is known to Claude or OpenAI? How are we ragging our data into to provide context for where Corey wants to go on his trip, and what are the things he likes to do most. So how do we give AI context that's personal? And I think this industry's greatest barrier has been trust. And I think that's always there for all technology. But will people trust AI with their bank data and others? And I think the announcement between Google and Apple is a huge unlock, because one of the things people have for Apple is trust. So, what is that going to do to the daily active users, right? How much value can you get out of it? And, I think, Noah, you were talking about these moments in life where you went, oh, I could learn more about this from this, right? And there's that access to public data and aggregated knowledge. And then it's how do we use that to interpret our private data? And if Corey's trip was planned with his bank data and the types of places he ate out, perhaps the restaurant recommendations get better.
Can you confirm, Corey?
Yeah, I was very like, I tried to give it all the context I could. Like, we haven't done this. We want to see all of the things. We want a night in the mountains. We want to spend a night or two on the beach. We've got a budget of X dollars. Go.
Yeah.
And I used actually ChatGPT agent to do it, where it goes out and like pulls up a browser screen and uses the computer, and it goes and it comes back. And some things it was like, would you prefer this or would you prefer this? And I'd be like, let's go with that one, or let's go with this one. And it came back under budget by like 20%. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, and I think Noah's probably a data fan too. Some of this is, where is it working and where is it not working, right? Where are people churning? What industries are we seeing planning to cancel versus keeping subscription? And how are the tools that went from being in many cases a better way to do search, but most people don't pay for search, right? So how are people going to pay? And
we had a question in the chat. Brad Silverman was saying, but how many of those people, meaning the free users, are still using AI as a search engine? Still using is an interesting phrasing, because I think most people are waking up to it.
Yeah. So search is still a primary use case for many, many people. The question really comes down to, is it a paid use case? And I think this is where Perplexity and a number of others have had challenge. Until you can get the value out of it, knowing you better for context, it's going to be, a utility that's helpful, but it, right now in the industry has been ad funded, if you look at search, right? And
I would argue nearly everyone is underutilizing what it could be for them. In terms of whether that is things in your day-to-day, whether that is things at work. I really love, like, I have a work AI account and a personal. Well, I have actually a kind of a good number of those, but like my two core, like this is my daily driver that I'm chatting through. I still use ChatGPT for that most of the time, but my work account and my personal account, I was just telling Grant like yesterday, I'm so glad that those are separate, because my work account is very different. My personal account talks smack and cusses at me, and we have
we won't guess what tool you're using.
But my work account is very professional. It knows what I do, it knows what I know, it knows what I don't know in a lot of cases, and where I'm going to need that help. And I have found it really, really handy to have both of those angles. Grant, just curious, what's our next industry we're going to tackle here?
Well, we saw somebody ask about energy. We do have that on the agenda.
We do have energy on the list.
We do have also, we had a good commercial real estate question. Perhaps that'd be a good time. Maybe we'll circle back to that at the end, and then Corey, you can pull up the command line interface. We can show that off.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
Joe, let's talk about defense and military, if you have any data on that. And while you're pulling that up, I wanted to just really quickly ask Noah. Noah, the 75% adoption, did that surprise you hearing that? Like, because that felt high to me, honestly.
That adoption is people who have tried the tool in the last 12 months, or what is the specific description of that?
Yeah, Joe, can you?
You're going back over here.
Yeah, the 75% adoption.
75% adoption is people that are using AI, but they're not using it daily, right? So this is lower frequency, monthly, weekly types of use. But these are people that are continuing to use AI. That 25% daily use, 14% overall subscribed, paid subscription, and we've got data on company paid versus not company paid. Some of the other ways that you look at why are people using it, so again, you start to look at company supported platforms by industry, and how much of that is getting preference, and how much of that is right now I think it's 42% of knowledge workers use AI daily. But the percentage of organizations that are actually paying for those subscriptions is less than 50%. So
crazy.
there's a lot of people BYO AI.
Bring your own tool.
Yeah. And
probably a lot of times that the employers don't even know that they're bringing their own AI.
There are still employers firing people for it too.
I remember
I don't have high hopes for those companies.
When I was a freelance contractor, you almost didn't want to say that you were using it because then they would almost want to pay you less. So like,
yes.
Oh, you're just using AI. Like, even though I was still doing a lot of all the hours of work, I was just using it to help me with research and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of times people don't want to say it because then it's like, oh, well, what do I need you for if the AI is doing it?
Yeah. And coming back to this, I did have energy for you. I didn't pull defense. I apologize.
That's okay. Let's talk about energy then, because I can share some defense use cases later.
But energy is amazing. 77%, 32% daily users, right? Wow. 14% paid subscription. And if you look at top use cases, writing and editing is there for so many. Data analysis is high, research is high, software coding, as you might imagine, index is pretty high, and then automation. So, very, very interesting. We also even measure work versus personal use. And, this one's a little lower. You tend to see a lot of people at 60 to 80% work use. So this is an interesting balanced user in energy.
Maybe because they're more energy conscious.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more like, hey, I don't want to be running up my bill.
Yeah. And, I just am always interested too on, as we look at this one, where do they show up in drop off? And it doesn't look like they're on this list here. But so fascinating ways we dig in, and I can always pull up in another window and dig into a little more detail. But I think as you look at the overview of adoption trends, where does energy fit in terms of total usage, in the industry, and then in terms of daily active use. But it's middle of the pack, so still great usage on a daily basis, in terms of percentage of users. So still in its adoption cycle, and fitting in, coming back to the examples we've all been using. Where has Noah discovered in his life? Where are people finding in their work journey? So construction, definitely, it's coming into planning. It's coming into other different areas of the team. Which roles we could drill into. Which roles in that industry are most actively using AI.
So let me put some external context on this. So one of the things that we found in our research is that utilities obviously are very stressed by AI. It's become a huge topic, especially over the last year with the current administration prioritizing building as much energy as possible, specific kinds of energy, but we won't get into that. Utilities are countering this stress by investing into over $100 million into AI startups to automate load forecasting and wildfire detection with industrial scale predictive maintenance, now monitoring thousands of assets in real time to prevent methane leaks and blackouts. So that's probably not your ChatGPT use case. That's definitely more of a deep ML type of product, but really fascinating, all the different ways that they're applying it. So, for example, we looked at Shell, who monitors over 10,000 pieces of equipment with predictive AI to prevent methane flares and outages, which is very important, working with oil.
Predictive maintenance.
Yeah.
The ability to kind of know, okay, there's been a heavy load on this area for a long time. We're going to need to get in there and swap this before we maybe start having outages. It makes me think of areas like California and Texas that deal with blackouts all the time.
Oh yeah,
where you're always having energy issues. Poor San Francisco, man, got beat up over the last month when it comes to blackouts over on the west side, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah, and all the Waymos getting frozen in
taken
place.
Down. It was a Waymo apocalypse.
Energy and physical AI, converge.
Yeah,
seriously. No, I mean, they go hand in hand, right? Like we talk about the limits of compute. A lot of times that's power. That's not chips, right? I'm sure NVIDIA would print more chips if they could power them all. We've heard this with Microsoft having data centers full of chips that are just waiting to be plugged into the grid, right? Like, so that's definitely an issue.
Yeah, there are definitely the data center demand is there. You know, I mean, and the truth is data centers are in a situation where, you know, you go areas, you'll see them building out solar fields and windmills and all of the things. And it's not even so much about them trying to be sustainable as trying to find ways to get energy that they can't get otherwise.
Yeah, it's everything. It's an everything.
It's all of
plus.
those.
Yeah, all of the above option. Yeah. Also, another interesting thing is that now we basically have a prosumer problem in energy, which is basically consumers of energy are now also producers. You know, for example, if you have solar panels on your house or you know, local wind. I don't know if people do that, but you could in theory do it.
Depends on where you
batteries
live, right?
Batteries on your house. And this requires actually AI to manage the two-way power flow because it's just too difficult to do it, you know, with humans, and you need to be able to do it like really quickly. So one of the tools that we saw that people are using to do this is AutoGrid, which is a virtual power plant. I think there's a lot of different companies that do this, where basically it aggregates residential batteries, EVs, and thermostats to basically shed load during peak demand. So that helps prevent blackouts, like in the case of what you just went through, Joe, and also helps prevent like firing up maybe like more dirtier power sources for folks who are interested in that.
You know, I'll bet EVs have really changed what peak power time is too, because there's a lot of, I mean, you go to San Francisco, there's so many EVs, it's crazy. And when all of those cars are charging at night, I mean, those are drawing a hefty load to recharge those gigantic lithium ion battery packs. I can't help but wonder if that hasn't like led to much higher demand in the overnight hours. I mean, all those, your Waymos, your Lime scooters, all of that stuff that's all charging overnight.
Well, it's
Joe,
very
before
interesting
we
'cause
move
that-
on to before we move on to the next one, Joe, I want to help Greg out here, one of our listeners who is has a vital question about your glasses. Would love to know where you get them.
Where'd you get them?
These are Gentle Monster. They're
Nice.
thank you. They're from Milan, but Gentle Monster, and I love them.
Not sponsored, no free ads, but
this
Next
is
time
a
we're gonna
genuine
have to
shout
get
out.
the Meta AI glasses. We're all gonna have to show up with those.
Corey has one.
They are my go-to. I've been wearing them for 2.5 years. I a lot of times take them off when we're doing video because I get some glare. I use these things so much. I genuinely love them.
What are the biggest use cases for you, Corey?
For me, the
question.
biggest use cases center around, you know, I have grandkids and I've been able to do things like when we're out in the yard playing and I'm running and chasing Archie, I can turn these on to record and we can do all kinds of fun stuff. And I get this killer first person video.
That is such a wholesome use case.
That is the most wholesome use case I know. But you know, other things I use it for is this is what we were using when we were trying to figure out the car problem. I've used it with my garage and it was like, what model is it? And I look up and let it take a picture of the model number on the bottom of my garage. And it comes back with, oh, you've probably got stuff in front of one of your things, in front of one of your sensors or something, or they're misaligned.
Actually, that's such a useful use case because the other day I was trying to deplug my sink and there was this disgusting chloroform kind of bubble in the. Yeah, it looked really problematic. And I was using my phone and I had like a mask on and I was like having ChatGPT walk me through it. I'm like, look at how nasty this is. What is this? You know, would have been nice to have some glasses on.
Yeah.
Can maybe Meta? Anyone listening from Meta? Can we get Grant a free pair of glasses? I mean, come on. All this free promotion.
Yeah, and I still want the display ones. These aren't the display model. I want to try those, and it's been it was quite the challenge to try and even get one of the fittings for it. But I won't dive into that today. But I was so upset because we were really excited to cover release day of those for the Neuron, and it was a lot harder to find than you'd think. And then it was a long wait because you had to do the fitting. But I'm gonna.
But as the
what do we have next? My goal is to let us get through as many of these as we can today because it's going to be slim.
I know. We're gonna have to lightning round some of that. We promised you 16. We'll lightning round them at the end. But I did want to address two things. So number one, Joe, you've got something on your screen. If you could just give us a very brief explanation of what that is. And then second, we had a question in the chat about personal and business account on ChatGPT. And there was an earlier question, I think it was from Rick, that was about the paid, basically like where does all the paid revenue come from? Like, because all of this stuff is so expensive. And does the paid number account for the API, or is that where a lot of the revenue comes from? Is from the API? That was my theory, but I want to get your take, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been a lot of transparency on revenue balance yet. I definitely, it's a great place that I'll research and bring to another to a Neuron, so we can get that in.
For sure.
A lot of the current revenue for AI adoption, is moved into. I mean, Anthropic is definitely getting it on company paid, subscription. So I think there has been a balance between API and paid subscription for end user, right? So, and loads have been distributed, right? I mean, definitely you get a huge agentic load, but I think you start to look at where the cost per token has been and how much people have moved around. So, I'd rather give a really good fact-based answer there instead of a guess. But part of what you sort of look at is, coming to the cost side, what's the productivity benefit of these things? How are they paying for themselves? And, I made the comment, I personally think we've had between $500 billion and $750 billion in increased knowledge worker productivity. Offsetting, wow. So everybody keeps talking about bubble, and I think the actual productivity increase tied to AI is in year getting close to the CapEx. So that's unusual. When you spend, capital expenditure, it takes a few years, or 18, 24 months to rationalize it. And I think we're seeing a much better performance. I just think a lot of times it's been measured not at the worker level. People are looking at IT and other leadership, measuring it, and you're just not getting enough granular detail. So people tend to, get it discounted back. But this is just hours saved per week by industry from AI, right? And these are people's
who's
opinions.
saving the most? Can you tell us who's in the green zone?
So telecom is at the top. Is this not big enough? And then science and biotech right below it. Media. And, this is, I think you're starting to continue to see it used in the creative pursuit and communication world. Construction comes next, then finance. So the top 5 are not what I think everybody would think of. Most people would say professional services. And,
or coding.
You'd think lawyers, you would think stuff like that, but
Yeah. So, and again, it's very interesting. Are we saving time in software, or are we increasing output? Right. So
those are different things, and that's a good call out.
I think about that in media, because we can basically write any article in a matter of seconds potentially. So that doesn't. But just because you write an AI slop article doesn't mean that it actually increases value, right?
Correct. Yeah. It doesn't make it good at that speed. But I mean, if you can generate and then spend 45 minutes or an hour editing, and have something that is, you're looking at hours and hours saved, even that way, and still at similar or better quality in the end. And it's, I think that's a good thing. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is it takes time to upskill people. It doesn't happen overnight. And, Grant and I have been a part of doing that hands-on ourselves, even at our parent company. And one of the things you learn is that, the only way they get better is hours in the tool. The fact of the matter is you can give them what they need to understand how to use it, but hours in the tool are where they get better. The more you use it, the better you get, the more you understand things, I think. And it takes all of the things. And, it doesn't, you're going to put money in for a while before you see money. Just like with any investment. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you spend before you make. And sometimes there's a gap in there. And I think we're starting to see larger amounts of people get better. Companies start to understand what their strategy even is going to be. Like, it's taken a while it's hard to make a strategy when you're dealing with tools that exist today and 3 days from now those tools are defunct, you've got to be targeting, building for 6 months from now. What's going to be true at the end of June, and you need to be working toward that instead of working on what's true today, because by the time you're done, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Who's in the bottom on that list? I gotta ask.
Insurance, an industry I know personally, and I think you look at the number of hours saved per week. Fascinating. Customer service is not seeing the AI adoption. You've had agentic, but you're not seeing the customer service workers. But interesting, public sector and insurance down at the bottom. And you look at insurance is about 30% writing, just about 17% data analysis, about 6% coding, about 18% research, 50% in web search. So just interesting as you sort of look at and then when you look at different people, how much are they using it in their personal lives versus their work lives is also an interesting complement. Not something everybody understood, that a lot of use. People started at work and then applied it to their home work. And one of the biggest constraints on AI adoption is data infrastructure, and really what's accessible. And I think that's
decades and decades of terrible data practices are coming back to haunt every business on earth right now.
Also, probably insurance, like it would save them a lot of time if they could just dump everything in there, but it's like people's personal data. They probably can't do that.
So trust in data and insurance, like banking, you tended to have a system for every product, or every capability. So you've got a real challenge of stovepiping. And you've seen Databricks and Snowflake and people doing data lakes, and in many cases data warehouses, which have been around, I don't even want to admit how many years people have been building data warehouses, but they hadn't yielded much value because it still took to turn data into value takes software. And we hadn't really enhanced the productivity of creating software since the advent of open source. So the spreadsheet was one way people turned data into value. AI is really the major unlock in that area, right? Because you can use AI to build software, or you can use AI to go directly against the data to turn it into value. And I think now the cost justification for data warehousing and data lake housing, the advances that are needed there is now you're able to yield a return on that investment. And I think the companies that are going to be most successful, and for everybody who's listening to the Neuron, using something like MotherDuck or DuckDB, your own little personal data pond, bring the data there. I think for all of our people on the broadcast that are in the tool side, making it easier for AI to help you move data into a data pond and create light join criteria is going to be a huge unlock. And
your own personal database for your personal stuff,
your personal and private stuff, that goes into your bank, data, and others, helps you pick up. People have been doing cleaning up for subscriptions, but how do you detect transactions that aren't you? How do you using Corey's example, pick your next trip and go to the places that you will like, as evidenced by your transactions. So I think there's a lot of value that's getting unlocked as we trust the AI more and we trust the vendors, and they make the commitments like Apple's made, like you're seeing from, OpenAI with OpenAI Health, that they're not going to train on your data, that they're going to protect your data. We put a lot of our data in the cloud, but we need to trust that it isn't getting monetized, outside of our permission, as a good example. Right?
I love that personal database idea, and that's absolutely a thing I'm going to do. I literally loaded up DuckDB while you said that. I was like, what a great idea.
And I'm not I think they're an A16 company. I think they're one of the, one of the most remarkable. They've got DuckDB local, or MotherDuck is their hosted, but it's a column database with SQL access. And
Nice.
its ability to extend your context window, you start to really look at using tools like database to compress data, to get you just the data you need or get you results from the data. And the work that we're doing right now, I mean, this is based on 160,000 survey responses, almost 161,000 survey responses. There's probably 60 questions per survey. You look at the amount of data and, turning that data into value. We do, visualization in Tableau, but, the ability to jump into Claude and MCP to MotherDoc and, and then bring other data in is incredibly powerful. And
so could you, in theory, use the local version of that, with your Gemini CLI, your Claude Code, your Codex, and work with it that way?
You can, and that's where I started. You've been around this trend for a long time. I mean, but you really think about people consuming context window, moving their data into AI. This dance of AI and data. Do you move it into a model? So, coming back to your question, Grant, I think, Claude very early, helped create MCP, right? I really saw this opportunity, and the ability to do it straight from the Claude client is phenomenal. But you're absolutely right. Anything else, you have to agentically access it, right? Or somebody's got to standardize connectors. I'm surprised OpenAI and
well, they have Claude open sourced MCP, so I think now, isn't that correct, Grant?
Yeah, well, they donate
what everyone's using now.
Yeah, there's been some talk that it's not the most efficient standard, and now people are switching towards skills. And I don't know if skills would necessarily replace MCP, because obviously it's like slightly different than that.
You see the skills in the CLI tools.
Yeah,
all of them.
So I think skills are another way to complement, what tools are used, directing what tools are used, in a given task. But, MCP, the way I think of it, and again, I'm sure we'll have others, but, it's much more on the data access, angle, right? And, you can give Claude access to your file system and use it to find things, right? You can use it to, again, this is all built on trust, and then, it accessing the data. But, answering your question, Grant, you can use it with anything. Any one of the tools. Some of the tools have just prioritized MCP access and really embraced. Google right now, in my opinion, incredibly powerful, but the client doesn't, do, easy MCP, right? I mean, and even in OpenAI, it's not been as intuitive. And I think this is a place where all the tool vendors, are going to grow their adoption and grow their revenue, as they put in the plumbing, right? And you're going to see a lot of people like. Go ahead.
No, it's interesting because OpenAI, one of the reasons their adoption grew so fast is because they made their API endpoints so easy for developers to use. So it was really easy to access. So adoption just exploded. So
the key there is developer versus user, right? How often, and what we're seeing in vibe coding is, because if it's only the developer population, what is that, about 4% or 3.5% of the workforce? That's not trillions of dollars in revenue. It's trillions of dollars in value, but that's not going to be the biggest unlock in revenue. But you've seen Cursor, you've seen the things that happened with Wiz, places it fits in. But you look at Lovable and you look at others, and this is turning data into value. Takes software. Who can make software, and what we're doing is democratizing that ability, to create tools and utilities that you create value. And I think
let's go there. Let's ask about the Noah, Joe. What have either of you vibe coded your own apps? And then let's do telecom after that, right, Corey?
I have a quick question for Joe. Do you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Joe, I was curious, when we look at the graph of hours saved per week, I feel like a lot of the so-called, not godfathers of AI, but the people who are leading the charge, a lot of the executives and the founders, they have these grandiose predictions that AI will actually create a world where we work less, where a 5-day work week turns into a 3-day work week. turns into a 2-day work week, or we just have to work 3 to 4 hours a day. In my experience, anyone I know who has gotten more productive with AI and is saving time on previous tasks is going and doing new tasks with or without AI. And they're becoming more productive. To Grant's point earlier, how do we know of the hours that people are saving in these different industries? What percentage of those hours are going to new tasks and to creating new things versus people are just going off and ending work early or grabbing an early dinner?
No, brilliant question. I mean, it's such an interesting question on a bunch of levels, because you really look at what are you being compensated for, right? What is your role in your job, right? And, what participation do you have in the value you create? I've built a bunch of startups, right? People are talking about startups being able to be built with fewer team members. But, coming back to this, I'll even draw an interesting place. The godfathers of AI have all talked about, the whole idea of agents replacing humans. I don't see it. Not in the data yet. Less than 4% of people have lost their jobs due to AI based on our research. 14% have got their jobs because of AI. So I think, and I think the industry's done an incredible disservice to itself by, fearing replacement instead of people understanding they get superpowers. Everybody getting increased capacity. So coming back to Noah's question, as you have the increased capacity, I'll laugh. The more technology we have, do we use it less? No, we use it more. And the ability to do more. So you're coming back to your question. I've vibe coded like crazy, right? Even this, and again, a lot of it depends on what you consider vibe coding, but this is an HTML document, right? That it just was a much better and more efficient way to serve this audience with our data than creating a bunch of PowerPoint slides, right? I was able to do it very effectively, iterate through it. Am I doing less hours per day? Coming back to Noah's, work is more fun. So, yes, I'd probably, but you also balance that out with other things in life, right? And if you can get the must-dos done much more efficiently, you have more flexibility in your day, I don't think a 4-day work week is short-term. And part of that's just if you really look at the economics of this, more tends to cause people to want more. So just the arc of the spreadsheet, it didn't reduce the number of people doing accounting. It 10x the number of people doing accounting. They weren't all calling it accounting and knowledge work. So I think we give people capabilities, and our goal is to take down barriers in creating things that are needed. Right. And there are a lot of things that weren't before.
The 14% of people getting jobs because of AI, that's really shocking to me. Is that jobs that AI has created, or what's the description of that statistic?
So I'm going to go dig into it even more, but right now it's tied to workloads that are now getting created for AI. So I mean, yes, you've seen it in data center, but you start to look at new types of knowledge work and, what types of outputs. So right now, you've got a lot of people that are helping organizations rationalize their data, right? There's a lot more economic value in that data that you have in your organization. So what are you doing to create data ponds and data lakes? What skills are people developing to use AI to, instead of ETL, right? To get data into these data sources is a good example. Does that answer your question, Noah? I'm just trying to, these are great. I mean, it's great, it really is, insights are actionable, and you start to really look at, for this audience, what are the skills? What are the tools? One thing on paid use of AI, we see people in multiple product use. And what is changing, from people's primary AI to non-primary, and some of it's coming down to, I mean, I think notebook LLM and what's going on with Nano Banana and the ability to create visualization, which typically was very hard for people. Even explaining it to a graphic artist and being able to iterate, and for us, how much more valuable does that make your data when you can change the way people experience it and understand it, right? To take action.
Yeah. I agree.
Grant, let's scoot over and take a quick look at defense.
Yeah, you got some something up for us, right, Corey?
I've got a little bit. I was bringing up some stuff when we switched over to energy earlier, and
let's do it.
That I think was interesting.
You're presenting your screen.
One of the areas that's showing up the most right now is dealing with planning and the idea that logistics wins wars. They're dealing with planning, readiness, maintenance, production, throughput, much like other industries are, but using it to really streamline some of those processes. But with that said, it looks like there are a number of things going on. Like for example, when it comes to use of Gen AI, that sounds like it's been kind of a problem in the defense space because, the military does not want soldiers going and dumping important data into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. Like we can't just let that stuff out. So GenAI.mil is a thing now, it appears. And I was going to see, which we probably can't even access now that I'm typing it into an address bar. Oh, yeah. We can see it. We can.
I'll actually share a couple of Palantir is another one that most people know. That does that. I've heard C3 AI is working with the U.S. Air Force for stuff as well. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, they're doing mission readiness, increasing aircraft availability by 25%.
Well, wasn't there an announcement this week about the Department of Defense and XAI's Grok?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, that happened earlier this week as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Project Ammo was cited as cutting machine learning model update cycles from less than 6 months, from about 6 months to just a few days. Another fast fact here, drones increasingly operate in GPS denied environments, and that's being done with onboard AI, I assume.
Interesting. Yeah, because it would be like, let's say when NASA has a helicopter that they're flying on Mars, right? Or let's say landing a spacecraft on Mars, there's a period of time when the aircraft just has to be able to fly itself and land itself because they just lose signal, right? So being able to do that is huge. One of the biggest companies in that space is Anduril, right? For folks who know them or don't know them. They've deployed what's called the Lattice for drone swarms in the US. They've done tests with the Navy and improving mission success by 40% in denied environments, to your point. They're also helping with border surveillance as well. So lots of stuff going on there. Yeah.
That's interesting. We have another lightning round one you want to hit, Grant?
Yeah, why don't we hit because there's a ton of data we could go into there, but we'll save that for the full report. We could go to either finance next or science and biotech. Joe, what do you have?
So I mean, both are great, right? I mean, I think if you go into science and biotech, 92.1%, so 92% are using AI. Wow. Almost half the industry uses it daily.
In science, I don't doubt that a bit.
Yeah, that was really surprising.
And part of what you're going to see, by the way, is daily active use and data analysis are very collinear, right? It sort of makes sense, right? The more data you have in your life, the more you're using AI to help you interpret the data. But 32% in data analysis, 28%, almost 29% in research, a lot of software coding. Again, coming back to what I said earlier, turning data into value has typically required software. And I think, very much you start to see a lot of analysis get done with AI, and then you codify that analysis into a sort of a reentrant, piece of software, and whether that's now vibe coding up utilities or you're building real systems. And but interesting as you look at the science of biotech, 16%, and obviously there's work being done, everything from AlphaFold and the whole research side of this area. But research is data analysis. Last I checked, there's the experiment and the analysis. So I think you're going to really look at those two being, the fuel that sits behind it. And interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go first.
I was just, a lot of people have been talking about healthcare AI, given, GPT Health that's come out and others, it has a trust and data challenge. But, if you just look at, the adoption rate, 80%, but daily active use in healthcare, only 26%. So that's, and, take a look at this paid subscribers difference. 32%, one of the ways you have data in AI not be used for model training is to pay, right? I mean, most of the providers. And so this is, obviously something that people should be looking at, but the coding use case, much lower in healthcare right now. The writing use case, I have a daughter and son-in-law who are physicians. They use it for transcription a lot. One is in research, and they use it extensively in research. But I just thought that would be an interesting industry comparison, as you start to put them side by side.
Let's go around the horn real fast. Who uses AI for health advice? Start with you, Corey.
As recently as Wednesday evening. like basic stuff. I say that. With that said, some of the really in-depth stuff that's been done is super impressive. But it's really handy when you have, I don't know, a little thing you're worried about. I feel like, look at this mole. Should I be worried?
Or just, should I be worried about whatever you would Google normally, but you can give it a lot more specific information.
Yeah.
I used it the other week. I had a sty in my eye, and I was just going back and forth with the chat because I was traveling at the time, and I needed to figure out how to see a doctor and which type of doctor and another language and how I could translate my concern into Spanish. Like, it was so, I don't know what I would have done without it, to be honest. I would have been in a lot more pain for the rest of the trip.
That is.
Yeah. Because I have trouble finding doctors in America, let alone I was traveling. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, and I'll give a little caution, just given that we're all using it, but almost lost my wife to an infection. So don't put off going to see a doctor. If you're running a temperature. I think knowledge is power, but at the same time, you could have an infection, and the last thing anybody wants is sepsis. So
that's the hard part. I think that's the thing that they have to solve for, is like, when does the model know you actually have to go to the doctor? Because a lot of times I just need to assuage my fears that I don't have to go to the doctor when I'm chatting with ChatGPT, or like how to like take care of it at home. So like the model has to get really good at knowing, no, dude, you really should be going to the doctor right now. So that's a hard thing to do.
It needs to know your medical history. It needs to know the things your doctor knows. Otherwise, it's giving you sort of, we'll just say statistical advice. I mean, Noah's example, or taking something that's a skin thing or something else. But what is your history? What are the other things you've had? And so, I mean, I think we've got to blend the two. And I think OpenAI's the demand for health in AI is enormous. I think I just finishing a research note, but almost 60% of people want to use AI in health. So there's a huge opportunity there. And now the big question is going to be, who do you trust? And how do you get your health data there? And Apple Health has been great. A lot of people wearing connected devices. Is Fitbit going to come back? As I don't know if it ever really left, but what are going to be the devices that give you the telemetry data? That help it make good recommendations, go get care. And I think whether seniors or others, catching anomalous heart rate. I lost my mother to a heart attack. if she had been wearing a device and, thank you. But if she had been wearing a device that helped her understand that she had had a heart attack, she would have gone in and, because most women are different than men. They don't pronounce the same way.
Oh yeah. A lot more women don't they don't even know they're having a heart attack. I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a huge opportunity and huge unlock, but we've got to make sure that the data's, good and that people are getting the right recommendations. So sorry, didn't mean to distract too much there, but I think as we all look at it on a personal basis.
No, I agree.
That's huge.
Though I would say when you look at what's happening in science and biotech from an industry perspective, that there's some amazing stuff right now. AI is designing molecules and robots are running wet lab tests. We've even got drug discovery happening faster. There's a company out of China, in silico that I want to say had a drug not come to market, but had a drug candidate ready for preclinical trials inside of 18 months, which is lightning fast in the world of medicine.
Yeah, it's going to be great when the health, the approval process starts to meet the discovery process a little bit more effectively. And a lot of there's been health AI. JPMorgan had a big thing in San Francisco this week. But you really look at, discovery is great, but we need to, get this more efficient in approval, right? Yeah. And, we're going to have the ability to start to deliver, drugs at, your need, for your, unique condition. But, how are we going to approve those? How are we going to?
I think something we don't talk about is that perhaps AI needs an important role in the approval process, like on the regulatory side, like for it to be doing probably more thorough research than humans are going to be able to do on every single application that comes in as well. Because, I mean, the fact is, good drugs do need to get to market quickly, but we need to know they're safe as well. And I think having AI augmenting the intelligent humans on both ends of that process is equally important in order to both speed up the regulatory logjam that we have. Like, nobody wants dangerous drugs on the market. I don't want that, to be clear.
No.
But at the same time, it's a process that definitely slows down the release of good ones in an effort to prevent dangerous drugs. And, where's the balance there that ensures we're able to get humans new help and new advancements as fast as we can while, trying not to kill them in the process.
Yeah, I saw something. I didn't 100% have the full context on this, but about Bayesian methodology for approving drugs and testing. The FDA apparently came out and said they were now finally allowing Bayesian as a tactic there. I don't want to go too deep on that because my knowledge is limited, but I was interested in that. I wanted to look more into that. Noah, I know you have to go on the half-hour mark. I want to make sure that we, get your perspective on the AI landscape before you got to jet out. I want to know: have you tried any of the command line terminals or any of the of Nano Banana or any of that stuff yet?
Nano Banana, I've played around with a few times. Not too much because I don't necessarily have any specific use cases for it right now. But it's really cool and fun.
Yeah, you gotta try it out and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, will do. At a certain point, guys, for me, a lot of my exploration of AI over the past year has been around related to kind of some of my personal explorations in philosophy and spirituality. So that's where like I have a lot to say about where AI is capable in those areas and where it's still limited. So it would be fun to chat about that at some point. I feel like
let's do a full episode.
I feel like on this podcast, I'm listening, I'm learning from you guys. Like I should be asking you questions and not vice versa. Just want to put that out there. So
I'd love to talk philosophy sometimes. It's actually what my degree is in. It was I'd spent a lot of time working with models and asking really deep stuff. It's impressive in a lot of ways, but I won't get too deep in today. It's a discussion we should have sometime. I think it'd be
Can
fun.
you give us your TLDR? Yeah, before you go, tease it for the main episode.
Man, I mean, just AI for personal exploration and understanding yourself and deep within your psyche is really, really interesting. You can go in so many different directions with it and learn a lot about yourself, I think. And that's one of the ways I've been playing around with it the most, is trying to just learn deeply about my own experience and my own psychology. It's really fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. It's fascinating because we don't want it all to be sycophantic, but we do. It's amazing how it's helping build empathy. It's treating people well, and how much of that gets echoed in the way people treat each other. So the AI's always got time to answer your questions. I mean, I think what's broken in society is this whole area of empathy and understanding, and some of that. Is AI a tool that's going to help, bring people back to civility, bring people back to looking at the other person's point of view, so I love where you're going with it. I mean, I think there's, what's broken in the world, we can fix. And I think technology does have a role in, so social media had such incredible promise, but it's done so much to divide us. It's going to be very interesting. And as I said before, I think the industry itself, and, you think about all the people in the industry, but how we help people sort of talk about how AI isn't replacing people, how AI is helping us be better informed, better in discovering. I have conversations with Gemini driving in the car that are absolutely phenomenal. And, it's great to have another human to have that conversation with, but in between the conversations with other humans, it's nice to think about yourself and think about the data more deeply. And it's amazing
how I use ChatGPT's advanced voice mode a lot. That's kind of my my out loud. I call it Johnny Number 5 because Short Circuit was my favorite childhood robot. But I use it daily and find it helpful for brainstorming and things like that, especially the ability to just bounce ideas off someone, very cool stuff. Very cool.
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on. What do you say?
Thank you.
Any questions for us? Any burning AI questions for us that maybe Joe can provide some data for, or we could put in context?
I mean, one question I had earlier, this is a quick one, but in AI adoption, does that include people who are using Google's generative search just to ask a question, they receive an answer that's powered by AI? Does that count?
That is AI use.
That is AI use, but we've actually measured it as an AI tool use, right? So, more intentional. So, AI is showing up embedded in tons of experiences, but really, are you using an AI application? Are you using ChatGPT?
Right.
What are you aware of? So these are, it's like everything in technology, right? It permeates into different types of experience. But AI as a user experience, AI as a UX, continues to evolve. And I think what OpenAI is starting to understand even more is that Claude definitely understands it, that experience can be rich. And but you're part of this is an awareness challenge. I mean, I could put up some other slides, but if you really look at Perplexity and even Anthropic, they're just the general awareness has not been, and I think this is what Neuron was created to do. How do you expose people to these tools, and make people feel comfortable to give them a try? And the fact that 75% of the U.S. population, I mean, this is remarkable. What else do we all do 75%? Even monthly. But the 25% adoption rate. I mean, I think there's this is a big year where with all the investment and other things, having more people use it more often, and Noah, using yours as an example, right? Where is the place that it delivers value in their life? And personal productivity, business workplace productivity, and as AI changes the landscape, how we navigate our lives, how we navigate our careers, how do we think outside the box? I think it's a great opportunity there, especially as it gets better and better informed by the data. But I don't want to beat that drum too hard. But I think there's the adoption has been phenomenal, and you're not seeing a decline. We are seeing some churn and drop off. That I wanted to and that's just where expectations are not getting met, right? Where value or people are switching to free because free is still meeting their needs, right? That there's just not enough stratification there.
All right, I know you got a jet. Thanks for joining, man. We'll have you back again. We'll talk about your spiritual journey. That sounds awesome.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. Good luck.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Bye.
What's your next
what
industry
are you thinking of next here?
All right. Well, I heard you say invest, so that made me think finance. I think we should go to finance now.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and pull it up on my side as well. And actually, maybe we could get Joe's data, and then Corey, I'd love to bring in the chat model if you feel comfortable. We can maybe ask the
I've been having it bring up bullet points for me each time we got to one of these. So
awesome.
And this is an industry I know near and dear to my heart. I have worked extensively. I was early at Oracle, and then have worked. We did the mobile in one of the companies I was part of founding for 9 of the top 12 U.S. banks. So most people don't think of banking and innovation, tied together. But if you actually look at online banking, sort of led e-commerce, there's a lot of things. The ATM led kiosking. There's a lot of places that banking has led, and it is an industry that has a lot of legacy systems and has a lot of data, but has had challenges, bringing that data together, turning that data into value. So, 89% adoption, 44% daily, high paid subscriber level. This makes a lot of sense. So I think, finance and banking, whether it's retail banking, investments, this is a very, very significant industry that has huge opportunity. But some of this is going to be, where does it also help change the way things are done in banking? And I think there's going to be a lot of new product creation in banking. The way banking loyalty is done, it's not very smart, right? It just pays attention to card swipes, doesn't pay attention to anything else you're doing with the bank. So some opportunities to really lift the industry there, but
even better contextual understanding of your previous transactions. When you look in like a normal banking app, most of them you can decipher who the name is, but it's never like clear. Sometimes you'll get a charge and you have no idea who this is. And I feel like there's got to be a smart way, to do that where it's really clear, and where alerting you to a potential problem is easy and fast. And there's a number of things like that I don't feel like they've ever lined out the way they could.
AI, the earliest forms of ML got used in financial services. There's a product called FICO Falcon. Most people know about their FICO score, but they don't know that Fair Isaac created the fraud engine that almost all transactions are viewed by. So the denial, and when we were doing mobile, there was this whole opportunity to alert you to transactions. And for every Neuron viewer, make sure your cards, your debit card, your credit card are in Apple Pay, because that way you'll get sort of real-time alerts. Coming back to what you said, Corey, the question is, do you recognize that transaction? And getting it as close to the point of transaction allows you to sort of, oh, that's this vendor, or oh, that's that vendor, or gosh, I don't remember that subscription. So it's a great place for people to turn awareness into action. And I think you're going to see continued advances. But financial services, finance and banking, everybody thinks of quants and traders and the model side, but it's there in the plumbing. There's one company in online banking, the MX. They're used by a lot of the banks, that have done the personal financial management, the dashboards of how you spend and helping you categorize your spend. I think those tools are going to get a lot of help from AI, sort of helping you achieve goals, helping you, I think one of the biggest applications of AI in banking isn't actually in banking. It's like we all go out to eat, a certain number of times. Yelp is not that great. Why does the AI not know where you like to eat and where other people like you have been eating that you haven't yet discovered? And even better, give that merchant, a little bit of data so that they can give you an incentive, right? Come here, here's a free meal or something else to help you do discovery. So I think finance and banking are going to hit other elements. No one uses their bank account just to pay other banks. You're using it to buy goods and services. So, and there's been a lot of discussion in agentic commerce, and that's a whole discussion unto itself on,
totally.
I mean, it's, people tend to like shopping. There's utility shopping, and then there's, what I guess people call
recreational.
Therapy shopping, therapeutic shopping.
Yeah.
So, I think, shopping is going to continue to evolve the way we find products, discover products, to meet needs, coming back to, all of our own personal health use cases. But, how often do you take a picture of something and say, find me this part? I was fixing a shower door. I needed to find a little part. So you've got, huge opportunity there.
Joe, can you share what data you have in terms of what use cases they're actually using it for? Because my understanding is that while banking is quite tech forward, they're also very conservative when it comes to new adoption, rightfully so.
Yep.
We were on our prediction episode last week. We sort of crowdsourced a theory, which is if you solve banking, you solve business in AI. So once the banks fully adopt AI, then business as a whole is basically solved per the kiosk and the all of the examples you gave earlier. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, but I'd love to know how they're actually using it.
So coming back, because banks, so there's a lot of writing in banking, right? I mean, like every other industry with people and communication, but data analysis is the lead use case, right? And you start to look at coding, again, how to turn data into value, right? So is it software? Is it direct analysis? And there's, more and more use of automation. You're seeing it, in financial services on the edge as an alternative, just like mobile banking was an alternative to online banking. Are you having agentic, capabilities, an IVR alternative, talking to and getting to the right person or stopping a transaction? So how easily is it allowing you to describe your problem? And, I think it'll externalize itself in the mobile banking experience, but, the first place is always, I think there's a lot of, people management, it's a human, there's a lot of humans but coming back to what you said, which was very well said, is that, e-commerce got unlocked when people when online banking happened. Because would you use your credit card online? That was.
I remember when that was a big discussion, and people were like, "There's no way I'm putting my credit card in a website."
Exactly, and so online banking helped unlock that. I think financial services is one of the places that continues. Everybody, well, there's the underbank, but there's trust there. How are they going to get their data into your AI? And I think that's that's an unlock, right? And more and more you're going to see people using their financial data to make choices in other places in their life. In enterprise, I think part of the unlock is how does this improve the speed of lending and access to capital?
I have a good example on that actually. So one of the tools I came across in my research was specifically around institutional research and how analysts use AI as like a reasoning engine to synthesize thousands of pages of earning calls and filings and minutes. And one of the tools they use to do this is called Hebia, which has like a matrix research tool. it's really quite fascinating. Like just imagine, I mean, think about all of the documents that finance produces or that, public companies produce, all the documents you have to review when you're doing a huge deal, for whether it's, whatever kind of deal you have to do in banking. There's, potentially hundreds of thousands of pages of documents to review. To be able to do all of that reliably, very quickly, I mean, I wouldn't trust Gemini or ChatGPT to do it because I think it'll miss a lot of details. But a custom tool for that's very interesting.
It's interesting because at Recon we use it extensively, right, to source and aggregate data for us to provide insights on, and as we're tracking telecommunications and others, and we're actually going to be launching a pulse service in financial services, I see these things aligning with each other, right? I mean, you really look at turning data into value, and let's see that Grant.
I was just bringing up our Codex agent here that is doing some research as we go and pulling out some just interesting notes about what's happening with AI there. And it's
this is great.
About where AI is really winning in this space. And it talks about faster research and memo drafting. Fraud and anomaly detection is big. That's the thing where AI just absolutely destroys what we can do as humans is in pattern recognition, and it's able to detect anomalies. And I think that'll be a really big, that will probably make it more predictable for the big businesses in the finance space, but also, quicker to detect for us individuals who, depend on those places to take care of our money. Compliance flagging, internal reporting, those all make so much sense. Call center workflows. But there was another thing I saw here that I wanted to call out, and that was Morgan Stanley's Ask Research GPT. Staff can query 70,000 research reports in natural language. That's crazy.
Per day, right? Or is that per document?
No, that is what their database is 70,000 different research reports that was it per day? Per doc?
No, per the document that I read, I think.
Per our doc. Yeah.
I
thought that was really interesting.
Well,
another quick call out was what they're avoiding, which is essentially black box autonomous trading execution, which is absolutely they should be. I think there's this idea that an AI trader somewhere in the future could be a powerful tool, but that at this moment we're not there. I mean, it would have to be able to audit it. You'd have to be able to know why it made every decision it made. You would have to be able to know a number of things that are still difficult outside of, some use cases that are being built. But
identifying versus interpreting, Corey, I mean, this is,
yes.
When I look at what you and Grant do and what Noah did, there's awareness, and then what does it mean? And so, these tools are incredibly good at helping surface potentialities. The real, question is how material that potentiality is. And, that's where the humans really bring, I mean, you can get, with the right data, when we do this, we pulse the world, and then we move that signal and interpret it using our data, right? And then we add humans to it to really look at, what does this mean to the telecommunications industry? What, the outage that Verizon had, what does that do to consumer sentiment? So there's, there's signal, and then there's noise. And really, your goal is to get pieces of the signal, but then to interpret that signal right out of the noise. And I think, this is, no question you're going to see this in financial services, but there is no business that doesn't need to know its competitors, need to know how it's doing with its customers. And so how do you get that data, right? And then how do you evaluate it against, your business?
Yeah, there was a tool that I saw in my research that basically does a version of this. It's called AlphaSense. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Yeah. Investment teams use it to identify signals across news, filings, and proprietary data sets, at scale and at speed, which is pretty interesting. We'll include a link to that in the story with this.
Excellent. Grant, what do we have next? What's our?
I think we should touch on telecom, and then we also have
Cool.
video games and education. Which education we can
Those will
save.
both be good ones too.
Yeah, those
All right,
fun.
telecom first.
But Joe, telecom is your domain, so let's dive into it. I want to hear what
Well,
folks are using, what use cases, and what tools.
Yeah, so I would have been great. The Roger Enter is the founder of Recon and is truly one of the most knowledgeable people on the planet when it comes to telecom. So I'll do a little piece of channeling Roger, which there's and I think in telecommunications, one of the things that most people don't appreciate, it's not just the AI usage in telecom, right? But telecom is part of every person's AI usage. Where do you use AI? And what we have actually found is the better your connection, the more likely you are to pay for AI.
So you're talking about Wi-Fi, 5G, both?
Yeah, wireless and home internet, both align. People that have better connectivity. And some of this may be, those are people that value data. So, how much of this is, cyclic, but, there's definitely, huge opportunity. And in telecommunications, the big step change is going to be the networks using what's called AI RAN, and there's, how do the networks adopt to data load, and, how do they, monetize this infrastructure more and more effectively, serve customers better, provide better experiences. So, at the core of telecommunications, it's infrastructure we use every day and just take for granted, right? It's, you only notice it when there's an outage, and, but the opportunity for AI to yield more capacity, tune that capacity so that it's there for first responders, slicing the network, and prioritizing is something that, it can do with intelligence. And, it's done digital signal processing and, other types of intelligence over time. But, you really sort of look at where does generative AI and, fit in. And I think, some of it will be software and systems, some of it will be running the network. But, when you look at the use cases here, writing and editing is there for everyone. Data analysis, research, software coding, automation. I think automation, the number of people that do automation in telecommunications, and then you look at what is it automating? Are we changing the customer experience? Are bills going to get easier to understand? Is it going to be, a place where we become aware of other services? I think there's a discovery problem in quite frankly, there's always a discovery problem. People have things, you can't find it on their website. You don't find it in their experience. How do you become aware of it? So, more and more, I think our services recommending, services that aren't just, upselling you, but are tuning your relationship, are going to be huge opportunities from the consumer side. But coming in this industry, 41%, 42% daily users.
That's high.
It's a data-centric business, and it's built on technology, right? And how to yield more value to the customer, whether it's a business customer or a consumer customer, is got a huge opportunity here. And and there's this whole, we could talk sovereign AI, we could talk edge. I think that the Apple Google deal is, Apple is incredible at creating experiences people love. We can talk about discovery of their features, is one of their challenges. But you start to look at, that's the way a lot of people experience telecommunications, is through their device. And how local AI is going to work on that device against your content. What it's going to need from the network is going to evolve over time. So I think we'll see it in consumer use cases, both in device, on device, and in connection. And I think the number of devices that are connected, the number of ways you consume these services, continues to grow as devices get smarter. So the smart watch becoming, and I think people have moved from average revenue per user to average revenue per account. So ARPU to ARPA. And you start to look at, you have an account, what is a user anymore?
Yeah.
How many different devices do we all have? I mean, a few.
So many.
And
It's
they all
ridiculous.
want to be connected, right? So I think that's a big opportunity. And
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think a couple of the things that I've found over here, I think really kind of feed into that too, is an area where I guess telecom companies are really finding values. It talks about predicting failures before companies notice and better optimization of their capacity, which I think is really interesting as an application.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to reliability and scalability, humans in the loop, are there to handle escalations, and but how much can you make things self-healing? How much can you make things self-adapting? I think these are industries that, where quality and reliability are very important to people. Price is also important. How do better utilizing the assets allow them to have better priced plans that get people to use that?
Yeah, and hopefully, robocalls that sound less like robocalls one of these days.
Yeah, but then that's scary because then you're gonna give away your data.
Yeah, I think the key is going to be really getting rid of robocalls, and
I think that's a good start. Yeah,
I think better identification of caller ID is pretty old tech. Let's look at how does AI resolve this terrible blight on society, which is both robocalls, fraud calls. I mean, you want salespeople to reach people, but how does your device evaluate that?
Can you imagine if we still paid by the minute based on the number of calls that come now?
Oh man.
I mean, you bought minutes in the early days of cell phones, and I remember my dad being like really tight with them too. He's like, hey, you've been on for like 10 minutes, Corey. I only get 90 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
You need to get off my phone. I can't imagine if today's volume of spam calls that appears were happening in that world.
Joel, I'll share a couple stories that I saw, and maybe you can put them in context. So Ericsson, they had 3 optimized networks that saved 8% energy, which was kind of interesting. And then there was 95% fallout reduction at T-Mobile. I remember T-Mobile was one of the first really big proponents of making a deal with OpenAI. They were really early, and I wonder if that had to do with how important mobile and wireless and that connection is, especially because you're talking over the cloud. I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, no, I think, it's, you hit a couple of areas. One is network optimization. This is a place that, NVIDIA's involved, AI Randall, Ericsson and others. You've had, systems with functions, and, how do you make the tower have less processors or more, sort of genericized processor. You've had specialized hardware, and so how does this allow more, adaptive hardware, I guess is the best way to put it. And I don't want to overly slay this, but I definitely think you're going to see increased ability to yield more efficiency out of the network. And let me tell you, the telecommunications network deserves a shout out. It is there in disasters. It is there. It has got great people doing great product. And I don't say that just because they're Recon's customers. I mean, these are great people that, do hard work to make it work in places. And, and we haven't talked about satellite, and what Elon has done with Starlink, really creating rural broadband, in places that it just wouldn't make economic sense to drag fiber. So, but how would Starlink work without, and how is it going to continue to evolve in that area? But I do think, at the end of the customer experience side too, really awareness of capability, and tuning, what products and services you use is going to be another unlock. I think, just people understanding, and perhaps taking advantage of better packages. Not every, when do people shift? We do a lot in this world. We survey, I think, 12,000 telecom customers a week, and really help the providers understand their customer, understand the price sensitivity, what is driving satisfaction, and how do they grow value in an industry that is heavily deployed, right? I mean, almost everybody has a mobile device. How do we get people to value it more and do more with it?
Yeah,
That's a good point.
That's huge. Yeah, because we have a superpower. I mean, we have two superpowers in our pocket, right? We have the entire mobile device, and then the AI that we can access through the mobile device. How do we make the most out of both of those?
And I think if you wanted to look at AI on mobile in 2025, it was there, and it's a very dominant point of use. But its access to data has been just non-private data, and so I think that's where you're going to see I'm not
Apple
looking
Google deal.
Yeah, and just being able to find photos on your phone more efficiently.
Oh my God, right? That's
having
honestly,
Siri work.
That's the only thing I like about Apple Intelligence is that I can search like memes. I can search LA or something, and it does a decently acceptable job of finding them. Not perfect. There's always stuff that slips through, but that is absolutely the feature I use the most.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people. Brief tangent. There's a lot of people who code on their phone now. I've seen there's a lot of different ways to do this. Mostly it's hackers and programmers who've come up with their own solution, but there are apps now that are custom made to do this. So having the ability to just code apps on your phone via an app is just wild. And
I use V0 on my phone.
There you go.
I do use V0, but I mean, like, I'm not coding; it's coding. I'm just saying, hey, go do this thing.
Well, that's what a lot of people are
doing.
Yeah, they're instructing Claude to go off and do something for them, and then checking their work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We are going to lightning round through the last couple of these, so we're going to do video games. Corey, I understand that you've got the bot cooking.
Yeah, I've got a little bit here, and this is such a fun area. The truth is, we could do a whole episode on video games, and maybe we will at some point.
I'll caveat with the industry is very torn on whether AI can be used or not. There's been a lot of high-profile cases recently where companies are like outright banning it, and other, or not banning it, but like a company won an award for a game. I believe it was called Expedition 33. And that reward was revoked after they found out that they used AI as part of it. So it's controversial in the industry. Yeah.
Well, and you're kind of looking at, and I mean, and this is, I'm going to step aside from the user opinion of it being used, because that's kind of an issue in its own. But supposedly right now, about 35% of studios are already using AI for some level of content generation. And where it's been clearly useful is like background filler assets, placeholder art, voiceover, sound effects-y kind of stuff, even rapid prototyping. But the areas where they still don't fully seem to trust it are around like, hero assets, like your main character and key art for the whole thing. It leads to concerns about copyright stuff, for example. Not even aside
Rick
from
just brought that up in the chat.
But Disney did a deal. I mean, that I have to know.
That's huge.
So I mean, if you really think about some of the biggest assets at Disney, we're close to some of the early people at Pixar, and RenderMan was generative AI capabilities. If you start to look at it, I mean, what's the earliest instantiation of generative AI? And most people would say, it was an alternative to animation. But it's been there in sound effects. It's been there. It's fascinating. It's been used in different places. It's been embedded in the tools, and pipelining assets. What's happened in the music industry. So to me, it's unlocking capabilities, and it's only a 30% daily active users, but that's above average in terms of the average in the country. I think there's huge unlocks. And, and I think the fact that Disney did a deal, coming back to what you're
The
saying,
Sora
Corey,
deal?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
allowing people to, and Walt Disney was really, he really believed that you wanted to experience the characters in different ways,
Yep.
in the film, at the theme park. So AI is another way to bring those characters into your life,
and to life in a way they've never been, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
a video of, your kid hanging out with, wow, I about said Goofy and dated myself.
Goofy's still around.
Goofy,
Goofy's still around. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
they're still rock stars, man. They're an
Oh,
OG.
yeah.
Yeah,
But,
they're Lindy.
I mean, and not to mention that includes Star Wars and Marvel and stuff too. Like it's not even just about kids anymore. It's my generation and on.
But
Really
I have a daughter. It's interesting because you're talking about games, or we're talking about when we talk about entertainment, right? Because game is a form of entertainment. My youngest is an actress, and and a content creator, and I think human actors do more than just act, right? They're interacting with others, is what they bring to a story. But making it easier to digital cameras changed the the entertainment industry. What can be done in effects, and how much the effects budget has absorbed of the creative budget, and does this rationalize that? Does this allow people to create great storytelling? The word processor didn't create a whole bunch of new great authors. I do think AI slop will happen in entertainment. It's already there, but but used by creatives, how does it unlock? Corey, you've got music industry background too. How does it transform the ability for people to create and take their passion and turn it into something? And it's definitely, you're seeing it in first person games and other things. People being able to create the vibe code a game up. But I think it's going to make its way into, again, increasing the quality, or at least increasing the quantity of output. We'll see about quality, right? I mean,
quality
the truth
is
of all
TBD.
tools.
Two things I'm most excited for. I love the idea, and then this is kind of happening now, I think. But dynamic unscripted NPCs are a really cool thing within games, in my opinion. Where it's not the same story every time you go through. But as a guy who's busy and doesn't have the time for gaming like you used to, I miss great campaigns. I miss the days where you could have a good campaign mode. You didn't have to deal with other people. I deal with other people all day. I game because I don't want to deal with other people sometimes. And I miss good in-depth campaign modes. And I would love the idea to just be able to, keep the story going, click, and just be able to kind of keep that going. If you had a game you like, be able to stick with it for a long, long time,
So I'll give you an interesting twist on that one, right? Because, that's self-directed play, which I think is great. But, really having AI unlock the potential of human to human play. What's nice about playing a game of chess, chess.com is there, but it's not the same experience, right? So you start to look at 8 to 80 people anywhere can play a game with each other in a video call, right? And whether that's chess or checkers, and you can make that call safe. I mean, observational AI can make sure that things don't get said in the conversation, or so that you don't have stranger danger. You can do simultaneous translation. So I think it's not just how we get and utilize the things we can already do, but it's really easy to get gameplay that's with a system. It's still not easy to get gameplay with a human, and there's other things that happen in that experience. Making new friends. You speak the same language, whether it's chess or tournament play or poker. I'm not encouraging gambling, but you start to really look at, in turn-based games, when it's not your turn, you talk.
What if my chat GPT and what it knows about me could connect to Grant's chat GPT with what it knows about him, and develop a game on the fly that we would like and play together?
would
or
be crazy.
something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm just spitballing
I
bizarre
do,
ideas.
I do think that there's something to that where, and I was thinking about this with the health data as well. Like Tim Berners-Lee, who's one of the creators of the internet or the inventors of the internet, he has this concept called data pods where we should be the owners of all of the data that we generate. And then we choose selectively who we share that with and what businesses we share that with, which is very opposite of the way that it works today. Today, it's all the businesses have all of the data that we put out into the world. But it would be cool if we apply that to like our AI profiles, let's say, and we have our own personal data pods that we could then selectively share with each other, like
With
exactly
royalties.
like Corey's. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, that's a whole other can of worms with entertainment, which is how do you actually make it so that people who own the IP can get royalties when creators make something successful online. So you're incentivizing people to use your IP, but both people get paid in the process. I still feel like that's like the most obvious solution for this, but it just hasn't been solved yet.
Yeah, and what I wanted to show you is that entertainment has the highest churn rate in AI right now, or
I
the
can see
third highest.
What's your thesis? I'll share mine, but I want to hear yours.
So part of my thesis is a lot of the tools have promise, but then in practice they fall short, right? So
100%. And people who work in entertainment are really already anti-AI, so they give them a reason and they're going to be like, no, it's trash, it's slop, I don't want it.
Yeah. And I think a good example, OpenAI's early work in image gen, right? You could generate, but you didn't have character consistency. You would generate it, you couldn't edit it well. It was terrible, right?
Seven fingers.
My gosh, it was terrible. And everybody is improving, and I've been blown away. No one ever talks about Claude being used for image editing. I'm actually finding Claude to be better at getting stuff out of an image or making minor tweaks to an image that I generate.
What tool? How is it doing that? That's interesting.
So it's making tool calls and pulling different libraries. So I'll admit, I do something in Nano Banana, and I want to get that Gemini logo off the bottom. The fastest way to do it is to go into Claude and say, hey, get this Gemini sparkle off my lower right corner. And
I do that with ChatGPT. I'll take if I use because truth is I like the image quality of Nano Banana, but I believe that ChatGPT's, what is it, Imagen 1.5 or something like that, I believe it edits more accurately, and has a little bit better text consistency in a few things. I did a thing a couple of weeks ago where I've been, and I'm back and forth because they both improve over time, of course. So, I try to use all of the tools as much as I can, because I think with our role here, I think it's really important that we touch as many things as we can touch as far as the tools go, and at least experience them and have some kind of an opinion we've formed as to what we like about them. And at this moment, that's kind of my workflow, but it changes. Grant, was education next before I forget?
Yeah, do you want to pull up do you have it pulled up? If not, I can share a couple stats there.
I do not, but I will in a minute. Let's see what Joe has first.
What do you got first, Joe?
Industry deep dive by education. So, definitely it's being, 83% using, 27% daily. I mean, as everyone would expect, writing and editing is leading. Research is, higher than data analysis. Software coding and automation is there. But definitely you're seeing, good adoption in education. And, I can't imagine an educator not using AI to facilitate, updating their research, working on lesson plans. I mean, Notebook LLM and others for visualization of data all seem to me to be, great use cases.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Banana,
and we're talking of educators, not the educating, the educated, right?
So we're actually talking about people employed in education.
Okay.
So they may be on the administrative side. You then we could go down by let me see if I've got it handy. So education, by the way, this has got 3.2 3.29 or just under 3.3 million people employed in education, 83% with any use, 27% with daily use, almost 13% paid. Obviously we've had, some of the AI companies do great things, supporting education, so, and then
that was one of the things that we were going to talk about.
Yeah. And, I think, let's just see here. I'm looking past it. So they're just in terms of roles by department across different industries, just thinking if there's any other, other data points. But now, we can definitely go ahead and share what you guys have got.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I think you shared this, like, basically the people in education who are getting the most out of using AI are using it as a teacher co-pilot to fight burnout.
I love
because like teachers are already underpaid and overworked and are expected to do a ton. Arguably, they've probably been in the position that a lot of us now feel with AI, where just the amount of work that they're expected to do in a given day is just astronomical with grading and all this stuff. So one of the reports that came out earlier this year was that prep time has dropped by 10 hours a week for teachers who use AI effectively to help them prepare. Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah, but
we should absolutely be using it for that kind of task.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, lesson plans are already sometimes repeated from year to year, but now you can update them much quicker so that the rate of having more novel information in it is faster.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is there is, within education, some ethical concerns around bias
for sure.
in models, right? I mean, I think you look at trust and bias concerns. I mean, legal is way at the top. Entertainment, coming back to what we were talking about in terms of ethical concerns, and obviously, guardrails in media and entertainment, right? You've got, young children being put in digital circumstances that are, not
totally
completely inappropriate uses of technology, and what we do as an industry to put guardrails up to make sure that we don't, support that. But in education,
and let alone the amount of students who use it to basically effectively cheat, and not do the work to learn something. Yeah, it's a huge issue.
That's a real double-edged sword too, because you don't want them using it that way, but at the same time, they need to leave high school with strong AI skills now.
1,000%.
Like kids graduating in 4 months, they need to be leaving with it now, or they are not prepared for what's out there and what's going to happen over the coming 3 years. Like, how do you? That's an interesting balancing act that I don't know how they do. And I've got some notes here I'd like to share that kind of touch on that too from our good buddy Codex this afternoon. Where was it? Schools moving away from detection toward AI proof assessment design and in-class work. Oral checks, oral exams are a big thing again. But here's the other catch is, cheating's been a big problem, but an equally big problem is false positives from AI detectors. Like, people really, really trust those things more than they should. They are consistently wrong. They're consistently extra unfair to anyone whom English is their second language. To people who learned English as a second or later language, they have really got to watch out for that stuff because, it's going to accuse you of things you may not have done.
Yeah, but the potential for AI in education, I mean, it needs guardrails, right? We need it to show sources, but so does the darn classroom, right? Is the interpretation of data the teacher? You tend not to have two teachers at the front of classrooms, so you got one person's opinion, and have the, is this education experience really getting people to go and learn more? What are we testing for? Are we testing for the ability to interpret knowledge or just remember, certain facts? And
I think we have to relearn how to learn. I think that's the biggest takeaway from all this education stuff that we've talked about all this year or last year too, is got to relearn how to learn. And there are techniques that work. I know the labs have released tools to try and encourage the proper use of AI with when you're trying to learn. So like OpenAI launched ChatGPT for teachers. Google has Gemini in the classroom, Gemini for education. Both of
Great
those
tools.
are for students.
Both of them.
They also have Learn With Me modes, right? Where it tries to ask you questions and prompt you to answer, as opposed to just giving you the answer wholesale.
Yeah.
But also, I think also perhaps what we need to do is just make the learning process more procedural, where you're actually doing things more instead of just being lectured at. Because like we talked about a school, people who have listened to the Neuron for a while know this story, but Alpha School, where they only do 2 hours of learning in a day. They do all of their lesson plans in 2 hours. And that's enough for some kids to skip 3 grades in a year. And they do it through mastery learning, where mastery is you don't move on from a topic until you've fully proven that you've mastered that topic, you understand it completely, instead of just waiting for the year to run out and then you move on.
Yeah, learning is kind of a hobby for me. I enjoy learning new things, new skills, new principles, new ideas, new fields. I mean, I'll deep dive into, physics for a while, or astronomy, or maybe it's history for a bit. But I use ChatGPT or whichever tool I'm using at the moment. Usually it's ChatGPT for this specific purpose, but as a tool to help me learn. And yeah, it will do some research, but I mean, I'm regularly telling it to, break these things down more simply. Give me an analogy. Help me understand this. Let's talk back and forth about it. I'll kick on audio on voice mode and talk back and forth through an idea. And what it really does is help me drive it home, if I'm honest. And I mean, there are things that maybe not so much. I mean, it depends on what I'm doing, but if I'm deep in the rabbit hole, that's very much my my process, and I learn more than I've ever learned at any point in my life. I firmly believe that right now I am only limited by time. I could do as much as I wanted, and I love that. And I feel like the ability to teach, to give that as a tool to young learners in a way that makes it cool, where it's explaining it to me and giving it in analogies that it knows I'm going to understand, because it has 3 years of conversations with me in its history. And it's like, here's how it'll make sense to Corey. You don't have that in traditional forms of learning so easily.
Yeah, personalized tutoring is the way. You learn so much more that way. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, no. It's so interesting as you're talking about it, because there's like 3 pieces to this. One is applied learning, right? It's much better to teach someone fractions through cooking than teach someone fractions through, classic methods, right?
Through a pencil and paper on a page.
Yeah. It's
That's
just fascinating how wood shop and cooking, applied math, makes math meaningful, right? You see the value. I think so often we teach without putting the relevance, and, how does this fit into my life? How does this fit into my day? Where would I apply this? So knowledge without application, I mean, some of us are curious, but we put it into a context. When Corey's down the rabbit hole, there's a reason. And some of it is, wanting to understand not just what, but why. Why something works a certain way, why there isn't more of this, et cetera. So, I think it's personal learning, but it's also the ability to start to apply that learning. And I'm really curious about how smart classes fit in, and other things fit into this learning experience, where, AI is one of the few technologies created in man is in our time where it can teach you how to use it. But so few AIs are purposeful in sort of helping bootstrap exposure to capabilities, et cetera. So AIs have to be good at AI learning, in addition to learning about others. So I think there's room for improvement in the products. But I think then the other side of it is, turning it into physical AI, turning it into, I think robotics are going to be a huge unlock for a lot of people's understanding of how AI and how other things work. So, there's just interesting areas of knowledge, but there's also the ability, as you were saying, to personalize it, to go deep, people have different learning styles. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic. How does, AI help, really, but I think underneath it all, it's how do we really engender more curiosity?
Yes.
And, I think, institutionalized learning can feel like jail, or it can feel like, a trip to a pretty cool place. A lot of it depended on the teacher and the tools being able to be used. So,
and the specific kids around you can have an impact on that, even like, the social elements of school, in my opinion, are very vital, as is having an education. But I do love the idea of finding a way to merge that alongside personalized education, because I think there's nothing you can do that's a better service to a young learner than being like, here's your path. You
see to increase the rate of efficiency, or the action efficiency of the feedback loop. So like how quickly can you get someone from asking a question and getting an answer that resonates with them, that they understand, that makes them ask another question? Like, what is the user experience that speeds up that process and gets every kid or every learner to have that positive experience of learning and be like, oh my gosh, I love this, I want to do more of this?
Yeah, no, it is really fascinating to me on, how do you ignite curiosity? How do you apply, learning and having people know what questions to ask? So, it's interesting as you guys are talking about the classroom experience. So much of the classroom experience is somebody else asking a question that you didn't think to ask, right? And, how does AI, whether it's for us at Recon or others, help us not just interpret, but dive deeper, right? And look at what we might not have thought to look at. How does it bring us perspectives, or what, you didn't ask a question over here, are you interested in this, this other area that's got material elements of why people are getting rid of AIs, or, some other area in the area of study, and I just think it's always fascinating, because the social construct of learning, it's not just what the teacher's saying, but it's really, why does this matter?
Yes.
And then questions around why it matters.
That's a thing that learners need to know. I think I loved your mention of just teaching fraction in the kitchen. I think you give a reason. And I remember being a kid, and like I learned geometry in my dad's sheet metal shop, because you're taking flat pieces of metal and having to turn them into three-dimensional objects. So you had to understand a lot of things. Like, I didn't know it was geometry. I also didn't realize how good my dad was at it at the time, until later. And but that practical approach, people, I think, I like to believe people are at least somewhat curious by nature, and they just respond better when they understand the why. And like, giving me the why behind algebra in school was not a thing that happened, at least when I was a kid. And I would love to. The truth is, I use it every day. It's just not me filling out an equation on a piece of paper. It's when you're in the grocery store and trying to figure out how much 20% off of something is, when you're, there are certain things that are pretty basic ways you use algebra, and, even slightly more complex mathematics in your day, that it's just fine when you don't know that's what it is. I think. Grant, we're creeping up on 2.5 hours. Do we want to squeeze any more in, or do we want to?
We'll
apologize for our overestimation in numbers.
Yeah, we'll let the people decide. I think we hit at least in industries, maybe just shy of that, but we promised you 16. You want to keep going, you let us know. Joe, you're welcome to hop off anytime if you got to go. I know you were going to stay until for 2 hours. So
this has been it's a great learning experience. Happy to contribute. So I'll go until the audience is exhausted.
Yeah, let's see this,
Great.
Grant. Have we gone through at least the 8 we were going to deep dive?
We have not actually. We missed agriculture, and I think that one would be worth talking about.
Yeah, I even have a thing I want to bring up with agriculture from a company I spoke with recently.
Yeah, this is great because you had hands-on experience with this. Why don't you go ahead and start with that, and Joe and I can chime in.
Okay, so what I want to say about I'm getting Codex doing its thing too. What I want to say about agriculture first is that this is an area where your first reaction is probably, what the hell would they be doing with AI? And the fact is, depending on where you look, quite a few things, and it's really fascinating. So I was at AWS Reignite, reinvent something. I can't remember right now. And
I think they do reinvent.
And they had a physical AI showcase with different companies there that were really, really interesting, but several of them worked specifically in agriculture, and they were doing things about looking at ways to manage fields, to manage crops, to manage equipment, and do maintenance and things like that. But one that really jumped out to me, and I had the opportunity to meet their CEO or founder, was Agin here, AI generated agriculture. And essentially what they have developed that is so neat to me is these robots you see here, and it's zooming in. Let's give it a second. There we go. These guys are completely solar powered, and what they do is they travel through fields and get rid of weeds. And the way they do that is there's AI on board, and it's also essentially a robot because nobody's controlling that. It's traveling on its own. It's detecting weeds on its own. And what you'll see down here, well, there's the rig. I shot a video with these too. Okay, do you see these things coming down here? It has arms. That's a bad picture. Here we go. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It has arms, and what they do is they just come down and kill a weed. They rip them right out of the ground, and it does it smart on its own, and it's lightning fast and more forceful than you might expect. But it comes down, and they do this. And here's the key. Right now, you're getting rid of weeds, and for farmers, with crop dusters dumping chemicals on your entire field from up in the air. That stuff's in your air. It's in your streams. It's not the ideal approach, but it's what works. What he's done here is created this gizmo. That really diminishes it. This robot that goes around and does this manually. No chemicals, no anything. One of these can do, I think he said, forgive me if I'm wrong, I think he said 8 acres a day. But the idea being, a farmer would have a small fleet of these that you would, take to your field, and they would all go out and do the thing for the day. They're essentially chopping cotton almost, like where they go out and get the weeds out of cotton rows. I just thought this was really fascinating. The guy who created it was a cool dude. His name is Kenny.
Corey, there's another one that I
never considered when I saw this agriculture stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. So there's a competitor to this from Carbon Robotics, which is one of the ones I wanted to talk about. So I've got it up whenever. And it's the laser weeder. So basically it does the exact same thing, but it uses this heavy laser-based system that like zaps it. Yeah.
Do we have a video?
Yeah, let me get the video.
I feel like I want to watch the Pink Floyd light show that flies out of the back of this thing.
Yeah. What I love is these are very different technologies approaching the problem, right? And you look at, the weed whacker, which, basically like a little mini hula hoe is taking out the weeds, no water consumption, for feeding the weeds, no pesticides going onto the weeds. And the thing is so simple, it could be solar powered. And then this one, which is, going to take a little more power.
Exact opposite.
This is the combine version,
This is the industrial strength one.
This thing is using some juice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. And I remember when this was, more of a prototype or early, it did not even look as intense as it does now. This is just, upgraded NVIDIA. It's got some NVIDIA GPUs on it. This thing is pricey.
But I think agriculture is one of the areas. It has always been an area of mechanization and innovation. Not everybody touches it like used to be in the old days, right? So not everybody sees it. But huge opportunity in robotics. I personally think it's going to be one of the major unlocks in robotics. Here you're in weed abatement, but actually harvesting. Especially in a lot of the products where you've got pickers, picking product, and there we go, strawberry. This is perfect.
I see, because this is the dexterity of the robot hand is what has always been the limiting factor here.
Was that your desktop, Grant?
Intelligence. What?
Was that nightmare your desktop, Grant?
It's relatable, but no, it's yeah. So this is one example. This is not the one I've seen that's really, really, really like it can almost grab a strawberry and squeeze it like a human hand can without popping it.
Correct.
It's truly incredible. This one is cool. I've not seen this one before, and this is about 3 years old. So let me see if I can get something a little more fresh.
Yeah, I hope it's faster now.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's a slow process.
That's a slow process, and I think you're getting the cost per robot down. A lot of cost of robots was software, not hardware. It's going to be interesting to see as you get to 3D printed componentry, and but coming back to it, I mean the area of need is gentle touch, right, and sensors within the hand.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can pull it up. Corey, there was a question in the chat that was, is some of this technology for coffee plantations? You want to ask Codex that and see if we can get a good answer?
Let me do that. Actually, we're gonna have to ask it. Could some of this technology be used for coffee plantations? And let's see what it says.
Yeah, because that's a very specific use case, but
it is, and it's probably going to ask me to approve the file a number of times
because we're not at generalization yet. A lot of times these use cases with robots are very use case specific. So they've tooled it specifically for just berries, and it knows everything about a strawberry plant, but it can't generalize to any plant exactly yet. I don't know if that's true with the ones that we just looked at, but yeah, go ahead.
This is really interesting. So yes, many of the same plant by plant physical AI ideas translate well to coffee, but they'll look more like scouting and targeted intervention than big row crop autonomy. AI scouting using drone and phone imagery models to spot coffee leaf rust, nutrient stress, drought stress, pest damage. Targeted spraying, of course, like we were just looking at with other things. Irrigation, forecasts and soil leaf sensors to adjust watering and fertilizer timing, reduces wasted inputs. Yield harvest, forecasting ripeness windows. Ooh, labor planning, picking root up. Actually, it'll do a hell of a lot with coffee.
Yeah, that's interesting. We also want to double check that source, but that's cool.
Yeah, we also had a question from Tiffany. I saw in the chat. Just wanted to give a shout out because if she's still there, but it was just a few minutes ago. If people are looking for things for students to do in AI. So one of the areas I think, whether it's finance, whether it's manufacturing or IT, start looking at ways to use AI to help those industries bring their data into the AI. Everybody keeps looking at applications, but applications are all built on data. And so I definitely think, coming back to something where we started, using, agentic AI to bring in private data and public data and bring it together into a way that then AI can use it to solve problems. Here in ag, you've got weather data, you've got, sun exposure data, you've got, where are the weeds most concentrated in that, because obviously the robot's going to need more time there. So
Yeah.
but I think a lot of these things are data driven. And so just a huge opportunity, I think a place where we underutilized AI in bringing the data into data repositories and, facilitating it being more accessible.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out.
That's awesome. I've got some John
I
Deere
want
stuff
2
pulled
seconds
up,
here. Let me be impressed with Codex.
Yeah, go ahead, please do.
So it gives me all of this, and it talks back constraints to planner, and then it comes back with, if you tell me the country region, typical slope, flat rolling steep, and estate size versus smallholders, I can suggest the 2 or 3 best first pilots for a coffee operation.
Yolanda, let's give us the country region, the slopes.
That's pretty cool.
If
We
you have a
don't
coffee
have to
farm,
even do it. I just was fascinated. Grant, were you gonna? I saw we had a question from Apollo about John Deere, and I know we had some notes on what John Deere is doing. You want to pull that up?
So I've got a video pulled up, I think here. So this is a deep dive on the See and Spray Ultimate System from John Deere. So this is just one example. So I'll tell you. So See and Spray is their precision weed detection and targeted spraying. So it's kind of like their answer to the weed killers that we saw earlier with the knives and the lasers. So their version is, precision with spray materials. But then they also have autonomous tractors that they're working on as well. And let me share. I feel like I was not sharing the right tab. One more time. I'm going to go ahead and share this tab. So this here is an example of their See and Spray. Let me see if I can find a good. Yeah, so this kind of shows you where what the conditions look like, right? But then getting a little more exciting than this, where is it? Yeah, right here. Let me share this tab. Just let this ad play real fast. Oh man, they hit me with the 15-minute one. Not 15 minutes, 15 seconds. Feels like minutes. Yeah. So this is an autonomous tractor. So if you look at that, no one is actually driving that tractor. It is completely driving itself. If you've ever driven in a Waymo or used Tesla full self-driving, comes as no surprise to you that tractors would be doing this as well. But this is pretty cool.
Well, I think for all the Star Trek or Star Wars fans, right? You think about, where did you see most physical AI in Star Wars? It wasn't just in space travel; it was in farming.
Yeah,
where
it
was
really
Luke?
was.
Yeah, and part of it is moisture and moisture measurement. Some of it is putting fertilizer in the places it needs to go. Right, you're trying to create food with the least, with the highest level of efficiency, yielding the best quality of output. And it just strikes me that you've got the combines and the self-driving tractor, but you've got this ability to differentiate between areas in the field, right? And understand where you need more moisture, where you need more fertilizer, all using imaging, video recognition, spooled in with the operation.
And completely controllable on your iPhone, like the demo was showing. So that's all controllable through an app, and he walks through the Motor Trend representative, like exactly how he's managing the whole thing from his phone. It's wild.
I wanted to. Yolanda gave us some specs, so I threw them in here just to see what it'd tell us.
Let's see.
And talked about Codepec, and it says best fit pilots would be early warning disease scouting, like drone and phone photos to flag hotspots, precision spraying, harvest planning, an ops co-pilot, local realities to plan around, shade canopy and clouds limit satellite value. You get better results from on the ground photos. Where was it? I just scrolled and lost myself entirely. There we go.
Yeah, and then it's asking if you tell me how many hectares, right? And whether it's one estate or many. Yeah.
Many smallholder plots. I'll suggest a 30 to 60 day pilot plan. What to collect, how often, and what decisions you'll. Oh, Jesus.
I actually think this is a good time to call out something we shared in the Neuron this morning that some people might have missed. And it was in Intelligent Insights, which we put on the website today. Alberto Romero shared a really amazing like, hey, if you're just getting started with AI and you only have 8 hours and you're trying to get caught up as quickly as possible, this is his guide on how to do it. And one of the key things that he highlighted was just keep in mind that using AI for research in something that's outside of your domain is really not advisable, because if you're using it for research inside your domain, you're going to immediately notice when it hallucinates or when it is off the mark. But if you're in a totally different domain, you have no idea if what it's telling you is actually accurate or not.
I always tell people to start with something they love. Don't start with stuff related to work. Start with your passion, and if that's rock and roll music, go ask it about, Dwayne Allman or whatever. If that's books, go ask it about whoever you're reading, if that's because that's how you can best tell. Okay, so and just over time, after doing a good amount of that, you just kind of learn where it's good and where it's not, and you sort of get a gut for what you can and absolutely should not trust, I think. I just realized I cut you off, Grant. I am so sorry.
No, that was great. Yeah, that's basically what I was just saying, is like, so I'm not qualified to assess whether or not the information it was giving Yolanda there is actually accurate. So it's always good to, if you're actually working in this industry or this area, at first use it for things that you're familiar with. And then on the education point, which we talked about earlier, make sure that you have, number one, thinking mode enabled so that it can reason through answers and give you a better response. And number two, I always usually like to have it check the web. So use web search to back up what it's saying. So then that way, when you're asking it questions, it's also getting it from it's checking its sources and sharing.
And grabbing some links to verify from and grounds it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been so much fun. I'm so sorry to anyone listening who's waiting on other industries. If we have to, if there's a need, we'll do another one and get to those some other time. And
we'll do a part 2.
I want to really thank Joe. Joe, thank you for coming on today. Your data was excellent to have right at hand, and I think it added a lot. And you're a good friend, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, guys, and it really a lot of fun. This is definitely a fun way to finish the week out.
Right?
And but definitely anybody in the audience, please link on LinkedIn. We're here to help. Our real goal is to help people make good decisions.
Joe, where can they find you? Can you give us the link? We'll share it in the chat.
Okay, I'll share my LinkedIn feed, and Recon Analytics is very easy, but go get mine.
I want to also take just a moment here and shout out D3 at Harvard again. Ika, could you bring that URL back up too real quick? If you're looking to expand your learning, your understanding around AI, and you're still pretty new, go check this out. $199 for a Harvard course with code Neuron Pod. You absolutely can't beat that. I mean, who doesn't want a Harvard badge on their resume? I do.
Doesn't hurt.
And, really, I appreciate that. If you'd go check them out, it really helps the podcast and helps us continue bringing you fun, exciting, and occasionally a little, what's the phrase, tangential like we get. And, but otherwise, we'll see you back here next time. Please take a minute to like and subscribe on your way out if you haven't yet, because I haven't asked this whole time. And we'll see you back here next week. We have a special guest coming. If you're familiar with him, it's a good friend of ours who is a content creator, does a number of things, but data science with Dennis. Dennis will be joining us next week, so we can talk about.
You might like that one, Joe.
Yeah, Joe might actually enjoy this one too.
Absolutely.
Talking about the intersection of AI and data science, and he's worked with some big names over the years, and he's really talented, and he's just a heck of a nice guy, as nice as they get. So I look forward to having him on and seeing you again. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.